All right, welcome back to ARC Salt Lake. Time right now is 7:31. Of course, we have been keeping track of the Murdaugh murder cases, the legal drama surrounding that. We discussed the Murdaugh housekeeper last week or a few weeks ago. Now there's another big update in the trials. Former Clerk of Court Becky Hill pleaded guilty to perjury, obstruction of justice, and misconduct. So we are joined by Ann Emerson from Criminally Obsessed for the latest here. And a lot of people fascinated with this. Exactly what did Becky Hill plead guilty to?
Well, she pleaded guilty to 4 different charges, and she had originally, of course, said not guilty on all of this. But after a year-long SLED investigation, the writing was on the wall. Now, Becky Hill, the former county clerk of court, she's overseeing the Murdaugh trial at this time when all of this was going down. They're saying that she not only obstructed justice by sharing sealed photos with the media after hours in the courthouse, and then lied about it to Chief Justice Jean Toll, who was investigating charges and allegations made by the defense team that she was also tampering with the jury. This comes up. She finds out, the justice says, "Did you show these sealed exhibits to the media?" And she said no. That was a perjury charge, and that was probably the most serious one. She also was using funds to pay herself out bonuses. She had to pay a $12,000 restitution fine. And it just, the litany just goes on. It's just another character in the Murdaugh saga takes a fall. It's unbelievable.
What a bizarre situation, too, to have a member of the court suddenly involved in all of the headlines.
Well, she was she oversaw the whole thing as the county clerk. This is a very, very small town. She knows everybody. She gets up there during jury selection at the beginning of the 6-week trial that we're all a part of, watching as media. I was there every day on that court bench. And she immediately kind of took the star and ran with it. You know, she was the center of attention. And even, you know, the judges that have looked at this case said you really were called by the siren of celebrity. And she wrote a book about it. She got caught plagiarizing part of that book. And from there, it just snowballed. The year after Murdaugh was convicted of this double murder of killing his wife Maggie and son Paul. As we all know, it was a sensationalized trial to begin with, but for her to try and get her own stardom out of it, I think that was the real downfall, and now we see it. And it's not over yet, because she got in the middle of this jury tampering allegations with the defense, and they're not letting it go. Yesterday, I was in court when she pleaded guilty to these charges. She didn't get any prison time. And the defense attorney came back for Murdaugh and said, look, we're still having an appeal in February of this coming year. And this is still very, very important, because if Becky Hill perjured herself during the last retrial questions to Justice Toll, what else has she perjured herself about? So those jury tampering allegations from the defense have not gone away yet.
Yeah, so how could that impact future legal proceedings here? What's your best guess here?
It is going to be at the center point of what we hear on February 11th when Murdaugh shows back up in the South Carolina State Supreme Court. That is a centerpiece, as is another piece of the way the trial was handled. But this piece has a real implications for going from state to federal. So even if the whole state agrees, from the SLED to prosecution to the judges, even if they all agree that Becky Hill, whatever she did and said to the jurors was not enough to change the verdict, that may not be the state standard as what will happen in federal court if they decide to pursue a federal appeal, because federal guidelines are very different. So this isn't going away for a long time, in my estimate. And Murdaugh has a chance of, this is not a credible witness. And if Becky Hill did enough damage, he still has a real chance at getting this double murder conviction overturned.
You listed off a lot of things that Becky Hill has been accused of doing or pleaded guilty to. I don't know if you mentioned this yet. 76 counts of ethics violation. She was accused of that as well.
Well, that's, I think, really what triggered this whole thing was when some information started coming into the ethics committee. There were reports that started coming in really early, like not even 6 months after the trial ended, that there were these ethics violations. So the ethics commission here in South Carolina started to look into that very carefully. That triggered what SLED needed to look at, of course. And those ethics violations, they're not cleared up. Just because this has gone through, she's pleaded guilty. From what I understand, the Ethics Commission is running separately, so they still have an opportunity to pursue some of these violations. Her troubles are not over. She has gotten through the first sort of hurdle, and it was a massive hurdle. She could have gone to prison for what she did with the perjury. You don't perjure yourself against a South Carolina former Chief Justice who's looking at a retrial for one of the most explosive trials of the century. It literally, it was the kind of mistake that was the biggest fall from grace we've seen in this story. She may be a sub character, but boy, did she take center stage for a while.
Okay, we have about a minute left here. You did mention the appeals process, how that could be impacted. Yeah. Any other twists and turns that we're keeping an eye on for this case in the future?
You know, with Criminally Obsessed, we've had an opportunity to go back and really look at all of the different the characters in the Murdaugh saga, right? So we've been going back and looking at this. And speaking of which, a podcast, I know you were mentioning earlier on the show, right before the break, please check out the Murdaugh Murders, Money and Mystery, my podcast, as well as our daily show on Criminally Obsessed, because we're delving into the Murdaugh story all over again. But one of the things I want to bring up is that we did a big 3-part interview with Blanca, who was a housekeeper, of course, for the Alec Murdaugh family. If you were sort of following this whole saga, Blanca comes out and says she doesn't think Murdaugh necessarily acted alone. And that's been a huge question for the defense, is whether or not they can create enough doubt if there's a retrial that Murdaugh did not act alone, or for them, it's, you know, this empty chair theory that somebody else did it. The evidence is overwhelming that Alec Murdaugh killed his wife and son. But the fact that other sub-characters in this story are coming out and saying, hey, well, wait a minute, did he act alone? That's so interesting for people that have been following it.
Okay. Ann Emerson with Criminally Obsessed, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.